My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I am 32 years old. Most nights, when Ethan falls asleep on the couch next to me, I can see the thin white line along the top of his ear where the ceramic vase clipped him. It's so small you'd miss it if you didn't know to look. I didn't at first. Back then, he was just the quiet guy 2 desks over in IT who always wore headphones and flinched if someone spoke too loudly behind him. I noticed his smile before I noticed the scar. I noticed the way he always positioned himself with his back against a wall before I realized he was measuring exits. It wasn't until much later, after we'd started dating, after I'd woken up from a nightmare to find him already awake, staring at the ceiling, that he told me why. This, he said, touching his ear with 2 fingers, is from the night my ex threw a vase at my head and told me the baby she was carrying might not be mine. He tried to say it casually. He failed. So I listened, and little by little, he handed me the story that shaped the man I love. Before me, there was Hannah. She was 29, pregnant, and living in Ethan's apartment when everything detonated. It was a Tuesday in late spring, the kind of evening when the light hangs on just a little too long, making you think the day will last forever. Ethan had just gotten home from work, already tired, already tense. Things with Hannah had been off, mood swings, snapping at him over nothing, picking fights and then sobbing in the same breath. He kept telling himself it was pregnancy hormones. That's what everyone says, right? By then, Hannah had moved in 4 months earlier, right after they found out she was pregnant. Ethan had paid off his place 3 years before they met. He thought he was doing the right thing, offering stability, a home, a future. Instead, he got a ceramic vase flying at his head. She was standing in the bedroom doorway, he told me, eyes distant. I was 10 feet away, near the dresser. 1 second, she's screaming about how I forgot to pick up the right brand of ice cream, and the next she grabs the vase and just launches it. It didn't hit him squarely. If it had, we might be talking about a very different scar, or worse. The vase sailed past his face and clipped the top of his ear, shattering against the wall behind him. For a moment, everything went silent, except for the ringing in his head and the sound of ceramic shards hitting hardwood. Then, "It's just hormones. You can't leave me because of hormones." She yelled it like she'd already read the thought on his face. Ethan reached up, touched his ear, saw blood on his fingertips, and something in him finally snapped into focus. "I told her I wasn't leaving because of hormones," he said. "I was leaving because of what she said next." Because then came the line that changed everything. "You want the truth?" Hannah screamed. "Fine. The baby's not even yours. It's his. I've been sleeping with him since March." There are certain sentences you don't get to unsay. That's one of them. Ethan stared at her, the room spinning, the sound of his own heartbeat roaring in his ears. March. They'd been together, exclusively. March was when they'd celebrated his birthday. March was when she'd cried happy tears over dinner and called him the best thing that ever happened to her. There was this weird pause, he told me, like the air got heavy, and I could see it in her face, the moment she realized what she'd just admitted. Because after the silence came the frantic backpedaling. "I was angry. I didn't mean it," she insisted. "You know I say things I don't mean when I'm upset." But Ethan had heard enough. He walked into the closet, pulled out a duffel bag, and started packing. Shirts, jeans, laptop charger. His hands were shaking, but they were steady enough to fold. "You're not really doing this," Hannah said, voice wavering between outrage and panic. "You're not leaving me. You're going to abandon your child?" "Not my child," he answered. "You literally just told me that." "It was a joke. God, Ethan, can't you take a joke?" He zipped the bag and walked past her. She grabbed his arm with fingers that dug in a little too hard. "You can't leave. I'm pregnant. What am I supposed to do?" "Call the actual father," he said. "The one from March." That was when the desperation curdled into venom. "You're a coward," she spat. "A pathetic coward. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" "You gave me lies," he said quietly, "and maybe someone else's kid." Then he walked out. He said she was still screaming when the door closed behind him, screaming about hormones, about abandonment, about how he was ruining her life. He drove straight to his friend Marcus's place. Marcus took one look at Ethan's face, then at the smear of dried blood on his ear, and handed him a beer without a word. When Ethan finally told him what had happened, Marcus just shook his head. "Dude," he said, "you need a lawyer." That night, Ethan slept on Marcus's couch for the first time. It would not be the last. Around 2 a.m, after the 50th text lit up his phone, apologies, threats, claims that the baby was his, then wasn't, then was again. He blocked Hannah's number. The texts blurred together into one long howl. I'm sorry, baby. Please come home. You're going to regret this. The baby is definitely yours. I was lying before. Too late. When Ethan told me this part, he looked down at his hands like he was still holding the phone, still feeling it buzz. I thought blocking her would give me peace, he said. I was wrong. 1 week later, the harassment got creative. Security called Ethan down to the lobby at work. He stepped out of the elevator and found Hannah there, swollen belly, mascara streaks, clutching her stomach like a prop. He abandoned me, she sobbed, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. I'm 6 months pregnant and he just left. The security guard glanced at Ethan, clearly uncomfortable. She says you're the father, the guard said. She also told me I might not be, Ethan replied, keeping his voice level. Depending on which day you ask her. She's my ex. We broke up. I'd appreciate it if she wasn't allowed in the building. Hannah's eyes widened, and fresh tears spilled over. How can you be so cruel? She wailed. I made one mistake, and you're throwing away our family. One mistake that lasted since March, Ethan said. That's not a mistake. That's 4 months of lying. Security escorted her out while she screamed about deadbeat dads and hormones. That afternoon, Ethan's boss called him into his office. Want to explain what happened in the lobby? He asked, not unkindly. Ethan gave him the short version. The vase, the confession, the packing, the lobby performance. His boss winced. That's rough. Look, I can't stop her from walking into a public building. But if this keeps happening, we'll get legal involved. For your own sake, you might want to talk to a family lawyer and get a paternity test lined up, just to protect yourself. Smart advice. That night, Ethan called a lawyer, a man who'd been doing family law longer than we've been alive. Ethan recounted the same story I'm telling you now. So, the lawyer said at the end, she admitted the child might not be yours, then said she was joking, then changed her story again. At this point, you don't know what's true. Ethan swallowed. No. Do you want to be involved if the child is yours? He thought about the vase, the blood, the texts, the lobby scene. Honestly, he said, no. But if she somehow proves the baby is mine, I'll pay support. I'm not trying to dodge responsibility. I'm trying to dodge crazy. Fair enough, the lawyer replied. Here's what we do. We demand a paternity test once the baby is born. If it's not yours, you're clear. If it is, we move for a custody arrangement that minimizes your contact with the mother. Given her behavior, assault, harassment, we have grounds. The retainer was $3,000. Ethan paid it. When he told me this part, he said, it felt like paying a down payment on my sanity. Back then, he didn't know how right he was. Sitting beside him now, years later, I trace the little scar on his ear with my eyes and think, one thrown vase, one sentence screamed in anger, and his life split in two. And Hannah wasn't anywhere near finished with him. Marcus always said that if Ethan hadn't called that lawyer, he'd probably still be sleeping on that lumpy couch, waiting for Hannah to decide what his life would look like. The lawyer didn't just send one letter. He sent two. The first was to Hannah, a formal notice demanding a court-ordered paternity test after the birth and documenting her admission that the child might not be Ethan's. The second was a cease and desist, politely wrapped in legal language that basically said, stop showing up at his workplace and using the lobby as your personal stage. Hannah did not take that well. She couldn't reach Ethan, he'd blocked her, so she did what manipulative people do when the direct line is cut. She went for his mother. Ethan was at his desk when his phone lit up with Mom. He stepped into an empty conference room and answered. Hey, Mom! There was a beat of silence, and when she spoke, her voice was already tight. I just got off the phone with Hannah, she said. She says you abandoned her and the baby. She's hysterical, Ethan. What on earth is going on? He closed his eyes. He'd hoped to tell his mother himself in his own words, without Hannah's rewrite. Okay, he said slowly. First of all, she's not my girlfriend anymore. She's my ex. Second, she threw a vase at my head and told me the baby might not be mine before I left. His mother sucked in a breath. She said that was a joke, that she was just emotional. Mom, he said. She described sleeping with another guy since March, in detail. That wasn't a joke. That was truth slipping out before she realized she'd gone too far. There was another silence, heavier this time. Oh, honey, his mom whispered. Are you okay? Not really, he admitted. But I will be. I'm staying at Marcus's. I retained a lawyer, and we're demanding a paternity test once the baby is born. I'm not trying to dodge responsibility. I just want the facts before I sign up for 18 years. I understand, she said, her voice steadier now. I don't like the idea of her being pregnant and alone, but throwing things at your head and lying about paternity? That's not hormones. That's who she is. Hearing that, even months later when he told it to me, made his eyes soften. You could tell his mother's approval mattered. She'll probably call you again, Ethan warned. She wants allies. Just be careful with what you believe. I believe my son, his mom said firmly. The rest, the court can sort out. But Hannah wasn't done recruiting reinforcements. A few nights later, there was a knock at Marcus's apartment door. Marcus checked the peephole, groaned quietly, and called, Ethan, you need to see this. Standing in the hallway was a woman in her 50s, lips pressed so tight they were almost white. Hannah's mother. Marcus opened the door halfway, with the chain still on. Ethan stepped into view. You need to come home, Hannah's mom announced without preamble. My daughter is hysterical. You've abandoned her while she's carrying your child. What kind of man does that? Ethan felt anger flare, then flatten into something colder. It's not my home anymore, he said. And your daughter assaulted me. She threw a vase at my head. She was emotional, her mother snapped, as if that explained blunt force trauma. You can't hold that against a pregnant woman. I can hold assault against anyone, Ethan said, pregnant or not. The stress you're causing could harm the baby, she said. You leaving like this, refusing to support her? The stress of her cheating for months, he cut in, harmed our relationship. Call the real father. Her eyes narrowed. There is no other man. She made that up because you were arguing. You know how people say awful things in fights. Ethan pulled out his phone. Funny, he said quietly, because I have this. He scrolled and turned the screen toward her. It was a photo he'd taken weeks before the breakup, his phone capturing Hannah's phone screen on the kitchen counter. On it, a text preview from a saved contact named Jay. Can't wait to see you tonight, followed by a heart emoji. Date stamped. Late March. Her mother's face drained of color. That could be anyone, she said weakly. It's someone she was planning to see at night, Ethan replied. Someone who sends heart emojis. Someone she never mentioned to me. The same month she got pregnant. Do the math. Her jaw clenched. When she spoke again, her voice was pure acid. You're a bastard. Ethan almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how upside down it all was. I'm the bastard, he said. Your daughter lied about paternity, threw a vase at my head, and is now stalking my workplace. But sure, I'm the problem. She glared at him one last time and turned on her heel. If anything happens to that baby, she threw over her shoulder, it's on you. The door closed. Marcus slid the chain across and exhaled hard. Dude, he muttered, you sure know how to pick 'em. Ethan dropped his forehead briefly against the door. I'm starting to think she picked me, he said. And she picked me as the safest option to lie to. When he retold that to me, I could hear the mix of shame and bitterness in his voice, as if being targeted made him somehow guilty. It doesn't, for the record. Predators don't pick you because you're bad. They pick you because you're good and pliable. He isn't anymore. Hannah's next move came in a large, official-looking envelope. A process server showed up at Marcus's place, asked for Ethan by name, and handed him a neat stack of papers. He sat on the edge of the couch, flipping through them, while Marcus hovered in the doorway. What is it? Marcus asked. She's suing me, Ethan said, voice flat. Emergency financial support. Claims I cut her off without warning, left her unable to afford prenatal care. Says I promised to support her through the pregnancy. Marcus let out a low whistle. Did you ever actually pay her bills? No, Ethan said. We split rent 50-50 before she moved in. Once she moved in, I told her she could stay rent-free during the pregnancy while we figured out next steps. But she always had her own job, remote data entry, her money, her bank account. And now you're apparently her entire lifeline, Marcus muttered. Ethan scanned further down the pages, throat tightening. The language made him sound like a monster. Cold, abandoning, neglectful. I've seen that filing. Reading it later, with Ethan's head on my lap, I could feel the subtle cruelty of it. The way every omission bent reality just enough to make him look like a villain. He took the packet to his lawyer the next day. His lawyer read in silence, then leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost disbelieving smile tugging at his mouth. She's really shooting herself in the foot here, the lawyer said. How? Ethan demanded. She's trying to get a court to force me to pay her bills. Yes, the lawyer replied, and in doing so, she's creating a beautiful paper trail for us. Ethan frowned. I don't follow. Look, the lawyer said, tapping the pages. You've already demanded a paternity test. She's already admitted, at least once, that the child might not be yours. If the test proves you're not the father, she's just filed a frivolous lawsuit and made it easier to sanction her or get fees. If the test somehow proves you are, She's still undermined her credibility by lying about it multiple times and assaulting you. Either way, her story crumbles. What about in the meantime? Ethan asked. Until the baby's born and we have results? We fight it, the lawyer said. We show proof she has income, her own savings, family support. We argue that without confirmed paternity, you have no legal obligation. Worst case, the judge orders minimal temporary support pending DNA results. But honestly, he shrugged. With this behavior pattern, I like our chances. A court date was set for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks of sleeping on Marcus's couch, going to work, pretending everything was normal, while a pregnant ex sculpted him as a villain in legal prose. 3 weeks where mutual friends started choosing sides. Hey man, one wrote to him. Hannah says you just bailed. That you're letting her suffer. That true? Did she mention cheating since March? Ethan replied. Or the vase she threw at my head? She says that was an accident, the friend sent back after a pause. Like, she didn't mean to actually hit you. Ethan stared at the screen. Accident implies unintentional, he typed. She threw it at my head on purpose. It just didn't hit as hard as she wanted. How's that an accident? He never got an answer. He lost a few friends that way. The ones who'd always been closer to Hannah anyway. The ones who wanted a simple story. Pregnant woman good, man who left bad. The people who really knew him stayed. The rest, he learned to let go. Later, when he told me this, he said, it hurt less losing them than keeping people who believed I'd walk out on my child for fun. I believed him. Not because he's perfect, he's not, but because men who want to dodge responsibility don't usually hire lawyers and demand DNA. The ones who do, they're trying to get to the truth. And at that point in his story, Ethan didn't know it yet, but the truth was about to wreck Hannah's version of reality in public. Ethan told me once that walking into that courthouse felt like walking into someone else's nightmare, not his. Someone worse, because by then he had detached emotionally, mentally, almost spiritually from Hannah's chaos. But she hadn't detached from him. Not even close. The morning of the court hearing was cold and gray, the sky heavy with rain that never quite fell. Ethan dressed in the same suit he'd worn to his cousin's wedding 2 years earlier. Marcus drove him, partly because he insisted, partly because Ethan didn't trust himself to show up without someone grounding him. I'll be in the back, Marcus said, moral support, and in case her whole family tries anything. Ethan smirked, but it was weary. They won't. They absolutely will, Marcus replied. He wasn't wrong. When they arrived, Hannah was already in the lobby, 8 months pregnant, flanked by her mother, her sister, and a young man in an ill-fitting suit who looked like he'd graduated law school approximately 10 minutes ago. Hannah saw Ethan and immediately clutched her stomach, her lips trembling with a practiced fragility. Oh my God, she whispered loudly. Look at him, Mom. He doesn't even care. Her mother glared at Ethan like he was a war criminal. Her sister crossed her arms, radiating judgment. The baby lawyer adjusted his tie and tried to look authoritative. Ethan walked past them without a word. Inside the courtroom, the air felt thin. Hannah sat with her entourage, sniffing loudly. Ethan's lawyer, seasoned, calm, bordering on amused, organized his folder with methodical precision. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The case was called. Hannah's lawyer began. Your Honor, he said, trying for confidence, my client has been abandoned during a vulnerable time. Mr. Hale, he gestured toward Ethan, promised emotional and financial support throughout the pregnancy. She relied on his commitment. She is now unable to work due to medical complications and is in immediate need of financial assistance. Hannah dabbed at a dry eye with a tissue. The judge turned a slow, measured stare toward Ethan's side. Mr. Hale, your response? Ethan's lawyer stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client retained me due to concerns about the pregnancy and the mother's behavior. Namely, he lifted a photograph, an assault involving a ceramic vase thrown at his head. The judge stiffened. Hannah's lawyer muttered, Your Honor, she was emotional. Ethan's lawyer ignored him. Additionally, the mother admitted the child may not be Mr. Hale's. I did not, Hannah snapped, leaping to her feet. The judge raised a hand. Miss Collins, you will remain seated. Hannah sank down, breathing hard. Ethan's lawyer continued, pulling out copies. Your Honor, here is a dated photo my client took of the mother's phone. He handed it to the judge. This is a text message from a contact named Jay, expressing romantic intent. It is dated during the time frame of conception. A tremor moved through Hannah's jaw. The judge stared at the photo for a long moment. Then, Ms. Collins, did you or did you not tell Mr. Hale the child was not his? Hannah twisted her fingers, eyes darting. I only said that because I was upset. I didn't mean it. Pregnancy hormones. Ma'am, answer the question, the judge said, voice flat. She swallowed. Yes, but... And did you throw an object at him? Her voice turned watery. I didn't mean to hit him. That wasn't the question, the judge said sharply. Did you throw it? A yes. Ethan stared at the table, jaw tight. The judge exhaled slowly, the kind of exhale that said he had seen too many cases like this. Given the conflicting statements and the alleged assault, he said, emergency financial support is denied pending paternity testing after the child's birth. Hannah gasped. Her mother hissed under her breath. Her sister shot Ethan a look that could cut steel. The judge continued, the court will not obligate a potential non-father to provide funds without confirmed paternity. Additionally, both parties are to refrain from contact unless through legal counsel. Next. The gavel struck. The case was over in under 10 minutes. But the drama was not. Outside the courthouse, Hannah exploded. You ruined me, she screamed as her mother held her back. You're killing my baby with stress. Ethan turned away. Her sister pointed at him like a medieval accuser. This is your fault. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth was already moving through the legal system like a slow, steady blade. Marcus guided Ethan out of the courthouse. You okay? He asked. No, Ethan admitted. But I'm getting there. Back at Marcus's place, Ethan sat on the couch, his de facto home, and stared at the ceiling. That afternoon, he opened rental listings on his laptop. I can't stay on your couch forever, he told Marcus. You can, Marcus said, but yeah, it's probably better you don't. They both laughed, a tired, fractured sound. Within a week, Ethan found a one-bedroom apartment across town. A little overpriced, a little small, but it was safe, quiet, his. A clean slate. But Hannah wasn't finished muddying it. The first wave came from friends. A couple who'd known both him and Hannah sent a long message. Hey, heard about you and Hannah. People are saying you left her high and dry, that she's struggling, that you're refusing to help. Ethan typed back. Did she mention she cheated for months? Or the vase she threw at me? A long pause. Then, she says that was an accident. Ethan stared at the screen. Accident implies she didn't aim it, he replied. She did. Silence. Friendship ended, not with a fight, but with a slow drifting into the void where trust used to be. When Ethan relayed this to me months later, he said, losing friends hurt, but not as much as realizing they'd never really known me. Then came the sabotage. It was a Monday morning. Ethan walked out of Marcus's building, his last Monday there, coffee in hand, already thinking about moving logistics. He stopped. All 4 tires on his car were slashed. Every single one. He crouched down. The cuts were clean, deliberate, almost surgical. Marcus came running out. What the? Ethan closed his eyes and whispered, I can't prove it, but we both know who did this. Marcus dialed the police. A cop arrived, shrugged, took a report. You got cameras around here? He asked. No, Marcus said. It's a quiet building. Probably random vandalism, the cop said. Ethan scoffed. Sure. Look, sir, the cop said. Unless you've got footage or a witness, there's not much we can do. You can file in small claims if you figure out who did it. Ethan nodded numbly. It cost him $800 to replace all 4 tires. Add it to the list, he told me later. The list of reasons he was done. After he moved into his new apartment, the first place in months that was fully his own, Hannah shifted tactics. She stopped screaming, stopped threatening, stopped texting through random numbers. Instead, she reached out to mutual friends with a different script. She's scared. She's alone. She's just trying to do what's right for her baby. Why can't you be more compassionate? Ethan ignored it, blocked numbers, forwarded anything suspicious to his lawyer. But the tension was always there, humming beneath his skin. And when he told me this part, sitting at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug, he said, that's when I realized I wasn't afraid of her. I was afraid of her lies. They had a way of seeping into every crack of my life. He was right. And the biggest crack was still coming. Because the baby was due soon, and Hannah was about to use that birth as a weapon. The baby came early. 3 weeks before Hannah's due date, Ethan woke up to a text, not from her, but from her sister. Baby's here. Girl, 5 syllables, 3 O's. You should be here. Ethan stared at the screen for a full minute, the morning sunlight hitting his new apartment's blinds in thin, sharp lines. He didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the message to his lawyer. Baby born. Please proceed with the court order. His lawyer replied 2 minutes later. On it. Hospital coordination begins today. Get some rest if you can. Ethan didn't rest. He went to work, typing through emails he didn't remember writing, sat in meetings where voices sounded underwater. His mind kept looping one thought: if she's mine. But he shook that thought away every time. Hope was dangerous. So was guilt. 2 days later, the hospital received the court order. A nurse called Ethan. "Mr. Hale, you'll need to come in for your sample. The baby has had hers collected already. Results take approximately 2 weeks." 2 weeks. 14 days. 336 hours. Ethan wrote them down like he was counting a prison sentence. That first week was the worst. Every night, he lay awake in his new apartment, staring at the ceiling, hearing Hannah's words on repeat. "You're going to abandon your child? You ruined me. She looks just like you." He hated that last one most, because he didn't know if it was manipulation or truth. When he told me this later, he admitted something he'd never said out loud to anyone else. "I had a dream," he said. "I was holding a baby girl. She had my eyes. And then I woke up and felt sick because I didn't want her to be mine. Not because of her, she's innocent, but because having her would mean being tied to Hannah forever." I reached for his hand when he told me that. He squeezed my fingers like he was trying to anchor himself to the present. Hannah didn't stay quiet during the waiting period. First came a new phone number. "You can't ignore me forever. Your daughter needs you." Blocked. Then another number. "She cried all night. I hope you're happy." Blocked. Then another. "She'll grow up knowing you abandoned her." Blocked. Ethan forwarded each message to his lawyer, who compiled them neatly into a file labeled harassment, postpartum. But then came the one thing Ethan did not expect. Hannah showed up at his new apartment. He'd just stepped out of the shower when someone knocked on the door. 3 quick taps, followed by a soft whimpering. Ethan froze. Knock, knock, knock. He approached the door cautiously and checked the peephole. Hannah, holding a newborn, wrapped in pink. The baby's tiny fists were visible, waving aimlessly. Her eyes squeezed shut, her face scrunched in a little cry. Ethan's stomach twisted. He cracked the door, leaving the chain on. Hannah's mascara was smeared, her hair stuck to her forehead. She looked exhausted, but not harmless. "Please," she whispered. "Just meet her. Ethan, please, just look at her." He did. Through a 6-inch gap, he looked. The baby was tiny, fragile, delicate. A small tuft of dark hair peeked from under the blanket. "She looks just like you," Hannah said, voice trembling. "She looks like a newborn," Ethan replied quietly. "You're really going to reject your own daughter?" she asked, tears rising. "I'm going to wait," he said, "for the paternity test, for scientific proof." "That's cruel." "That's responsible." Hannah's expression snapped, like she hadn't expected him to hold the line. "You're a monster," she hissed. "You don't deserve to be a father." He shut the door gently but firmly. Hannah stayed out there for nearly an hour, sitting on the hallway floor, crying loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Ethan sat on the other side of the door, breathing slowly, palms pressed against his knees. When he told me this part later, he said, "My heart broke, not for her, for the baby, for the mess she was born into." But he didn't open the door, not once. The results came back 12 days later. Ethan was at work. He saw the lawyer's number flash across his screen and stepped outside immediately, walking past coworkers, through the parking garage, until he reached the far corner where no one could hear him. He answered. "Ethan," his lawyer said, voice steady, "we have the results." Ethan braced himself against a cement pillar. "You sitting down?" the lawyer asked. "I'm standing," Ethan whispered. "Just tell me." A beat of silence. Then, "You are not the father. 0% probability." The world tilted, not in shock, but in relief so powerful it almost sent him to his knees. He exhaled shakily, a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, thank you." "You're free," the lawyer said gently, "legally and financially. I'll send a final letter to her, counseling her to cease all further contact." Ethan hung up the phone, leaned his head against the cold concrete, and closed his eyes. He stayed like that for a long time. When he eventually told me this moment, I remember the way his voice softened. "That was the first time I'd breathed in months," he said. "Really breathed." The lawyer sent the letter that afternoon. It included the paternity results, a statement relieving Ethan of all obligation, and a warning: further harassment would trigger legal action. Hannah responded with the text from yet another number. "You're really going to abandon us because of a piece of paper?" Ethan didn't reply. He forwarded it to his lawyer. Then he blocked the number. And that was the beginning of the real unraveling. Because if Hannah couldn't trap Ethan as the father, she needed someone else to carry the weight. And the real father wasn't ready for the chaos that was coming. Not yet. Not until the courts delivered the news. Not until his name appeared on a document. Not until he finally understood exactly what Hannah had been doing. Not until he learned that for months, Ethan had been living a nightmare meant for him. But all that was still coming. The calm before the storm always feels quietest right after the truth arrives. That quiet wouldn't last. Ethan thought the nightmare was finally over. He thought the paternity results would give him distance, peace, something close to a normal life. And for about 2 weeks it did. 2 whole weeks where his phone didn't buzz with a new number. 2 weeks where no one cried in a lobby. 2 weeks where he didn't wake up wondering if a baby he'd never met was his. He began sleeping again, really sleeping. 6 hours, sometimes even 7. He bought a plant for his new apartment, a cheap one that Marcus claimed would definitely die within 48 hours. But somehow it survived. He started to feel human, but Hannah wasn't finished. People like Hannah don't end things cleanly. They don't let rejection sit quietly. They don't allow their narrative to collapse without a fight. She couldn't bind Ethan to her with a baby anymore, so she tried to bind him with chaos. It began with a call to Ethan's workplace. Reception transferred it to his direct line. "Is this Ethan Hale?" a stern male voice asked. "Yes. This is HR. We received a complaint from a woman claiming to be your partner. She says..." Ethan's blood ran cold. "She is not my partner," he interrupted immediately. "She is violating a cease and desist order." The HR rep hesitated. "Mr. Hale, she said you abandoned her while she's recovering from childbirth. She claims you are emotionally abusive and withholding financial support." "I can forward you court documents proving none of that is true," Ethan said, voice shaking from anger, not fear this time. "And I can provide the restraining order we are currently filing." "Understood," HR said. "Please send what you have. We'll handle the rest." Ethan hung up, chest tight. He forwarded screenshots, legal letters, the paternity test, everything. And to HR's credit, they shut it down immediately. But Hannah had found a crack. She always did. The next hit came through email, but not to Ethan. To his mother. Ethan didn't even know until she called him, voice trembling with rage. "I just received an email from Hannah's mother," she said. "She says the baby's father refuses to provide support. She said you're being morally cruel and should step up because you lived with Hannah." Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. "Mom, forward me the email." He read it, then laughed, just once, harshly. His mother's voice sharpened. "This isn't funny." "No," he said, "it's predictable." He crafted a single precise reply. He copied his lawyer. He kept it cold, factual, undeniable. "Mrs. Collins, your daughter falsified paternity, admitted to cheating, assaulted me, and repeatedly harassed me. A court-ordered DNA test confirmed I am not the father. Legally and morally, I have no obligation. Please cease all contact. This is my final communication." He hit send. The silence that followed was immediate, and it stayed silent. For now. But the real turning point, the moment everything inverted, arrived unexpectedly. A knock on Ethan's door. A firm, controlled knock. Ethan froze for half a second. Hannah? Her mother? Someone else? He checked the peephole. A man stood there, mid-30s. Sharp jawline, tired eyes, professional clothing rumpled like he hadn't slept in days. When Ethan opened his door, only after checking the hall twice, the man gave a stiff nod. "You Ethan?" "Yes, and you are..." "Jay?" Ethan blinked. Jay? The name he'd only seen as a notification. The ghost in the background of every fight. The man Hannah had been sleeping with while telling Ethan she loved him. Now standing on his doorstep. Ethan stepped aside. Jay entered. The air between them held the weight of 2 lives Hannah had detonated. Jay didn't sit. He stood in the center of the living room like a man bracing for impact. "She told me about you," he said. Ethan snorted softly. "Did she?" "Not at first," Jay admitted. "I didn't know you existed until she got served for child support. Then I saw the paperwork. They had your name all over them." Ethan leaned against the counter. "Did she tell you about the vase?" Jay winced. "Yeah. She framed it as a hormone thing." "It wasn't," Ethan said simply. "I figured," Jay muttered. The man looked worn down, like someone who had entered a maze only to discover every turn was wrong. "I just wanted to know," Jay continued, "what I'm dealing with, what you dealt with." Ethan rubbed his jaw. "Truth. She threw a vase at my head, told me the baby wasn't mine, then said she was lying, then said she was lying about lying, came to my workplace, sued me, tried to guilt me, tried to trap me. It was a lot." Jay exhaled, hard. "I thought we were just hooking up," he said. "I didn't know she was pregnant until she filed for support. She kept saying you abandoned her and your baby. I thought, hell, I don't know what I thought. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, she's good at rewriting stories. Jay's shoulders slumped. I'm the father, he said bluntly. Tess came back last week. I'm paying support. Now she wants to work out custody, but she's already making threats, emotional manipulation, the works. Ethan's voice softened, then listen carefully. Jay looked up. Document everything, Ethan said. Every call, every message, every visit. If she lies, keep proof. If she blames you, write it down. Don't meet her alone. Don't let her guilt you into anything. And for the love of God, don't go back. Jay nodded, jaw tight, eyes heavy. You got lucky, he said quietly. You escaped. Ethan didn't respond, because he knew Jay was right. He had escaped. By inches. 2 weeks later, the restraining order was granted. A full year, 500 feet, 0 exceptions. It was the first time Ethan felt truly, legally safe. And around that same time, I met him. I still remember what he looked like that day. Worn, gentle, cautious. A man rebuilding himself piece by piece. I didn't know the story yet. Not the whole thing. Not the vase. Not the baby. Not the courtroom. Not the knock on the door from the real father. I just knew he had kind eyes, a quiet laugh, and a way of listening that made me feel seen. Later, when I touched the small scar on his ear and asked where it came from, he told me everything. Every broken shard, every courtroom gavel, every moment he thought his life was being stolen. And when he finished, I said the only thing that came to mind. You survived her. He nodded. I did. And you won't go through anything like that alone again, I said. His eyes softened. For the first time, without fear, without guilt, he let someone new in. Me. People ask sometimes if he regrets leaving. If he could have been more patient, more forgiving, more understanding. And he answers the same way every time. No, because staying would have destroyed me. Leaving saved my life. Hannah still tells people he abandoned her. Still paints herself as a victim to anyone who will listen. But the people who matter know the truth. And the people who don't? Their opinions don't shape his future anymore. He does. We do. Together. Ethan's best decision was packing that bag while she screamed. His second best was walking out the door and not looking back. And the choice he made after all of that, the choice to heal, rebuild, and trust again, is the one that brought him to me. It's quieter now, softer, steadier. No vases, no lies, no baby that isn't his, just two people trying again. And in the end, that's all survival really is.